some insight, have you ever sat down and really thought if you have siblings, like me, I have a little brother, even though we do have different dads, so genetics can get mixed in there. Say you have siblings, and you both have the same father, the same mother, no one's adopted, so y'all all have the same gene pool. What makes you look different from them? Why do they have brown eyes and you have blue? Why do they have straight blonde hair and you have curly black hair? These are all things that happen because of genetics. I'm here to tell you about classical Mendelian genetics and how this works. So, by the time you leave, I want you to know the answer to a few things. First up, I want you to know what is genetics, who pioneered the field of classical genetics, what are genes, what are dominant and recessive traits, and what are the 3 rules of classical/Mendelian genetics. So let's get started. First up on the roster, we have what is genetics, or what are genetics. Now, according to the textbook I'm using, genetics is known as the study of ways in which biological information is passed from one generation to the next. This is basically a study of how your biological information was passed from your grandfather to your granddad to you, and how you'll pass your biological information on to your offspring. The next question on the roster is, who created or discovered genetics? Genetics wasn't really discovered, but it was pioneered by an Austrian monk by the name of Gregor Mendel. Mendel worked in a monastery in the country of Brno, which is now known as the Czech Republic. While he was there, he posed questions that many of us probably ask ourselves. Why do offspring resemble their parents? Or why do offspring differ from their parents? In attempting to answer these questions, he decided to crossbreed different types of pea plants, because in the monastery, one of the prominent crops that grew up there were peas. In order for Mendel to test his theories, he performed experiments by crossbreeding tall pea plants and short pea plants, and seeing how their offspring differed from the parents. Now, where he lived, there were more tall pea plants than there were short. The offspring of the first generation was a tall stem pea plant. Now, when he crossbred this pea plant with itself, having the genetics for both a tall pea plant and a short pea plant, their 2 offsprings were a tall pea plant and another short pea plant. He called the pea plants that he crossbred hybrids, since there was both genetic material from both a tall and a short pea plant. In order to explain his findings and explain the characteristics of the offspring, Mendel had to create or invent the unit of inheritance, or what we know today as genes. In the simplest form of classical genetics, or now as we know the Mendelian, because Mendel was the pioneer of this section, we're inferred that every offspring has 2 genes, one from a father parent and one from a mother. To start the experiment, Mendel took 2 true bred or pea plants, one that was simply tall and one that was simply short. In crossbreeding those, the first offspring, hybrid offspring, was a tall pea. In the first generation of that offspring, when reproduced again, you had 2 tall pea plant offsprings. But when that generation reproduces again, you get 1 tall offspring and 1 short offspring. Now, seeing these facts, what can we tell? Well, we can tell that being a tall pea plant is a dominant trait, and being a short pea plant is a recessive trait. But what do those words truly mean? Dominant traits are not ones that are referred to as strong, more powerful, or overbearing, but they're seen as more common traits that you can see. Now, traits that are not readily expressed in people but can still lay dormant to be expressed in their offsprings are known as recessive traits. For example, if we know that brown eyes, and brown hair are dominant traits, and that means other traits are seen as recessive. We're able to analyze these traits in genes, dominant and recessive, when put onto a matrix, also known as a Punnett square. Let's go to the example. Based off of what we know, we can now know the 3 rules of classical genetics. Rule 1. Physical characteristics or traits are passed from parents to offspring by some unknown mechanism. Rule 2. Each offspring has 2 genes for each trait, 1 gene from each parent. And Rule 3. Some genes are dominant and some are recessive. When present together, the trait of the dominant gene will be expressed over the trait of the recessive gene. Using simple Mendelian/classical genetics is something we do all the time. It's the reason why farmers crossbreed in order to produce bountiful, larger crops and fattier and fuller livestock in order to be sold. Also, we're able to track diseases that are seen as dominant traits, such as cystic fibrosis and other fatal diseases that are passed down from generation to generation. So when you think about it, Mendelian genetics kind of runs our everyday life. While there are more in-depth things such as DNA, RNA, and more modern things, I'm only here to take care of your classic and very basic genetics. Thanks, and I'll see you guys soon.